So you're watching Ken Burns' video, country music. You know an awful lot of the people he's portraying. And in fact, your words and name is portrayed. What did you think of it? What was your general impression as he was trying to work a lot of hours about a history?
Well, first of all, he did a great job. Like, that's a big story to try to tell, but he's, in terms of Ken Burns, historically he did it, Vietnam War, Civil War, Dust Bowl, you know, these kinds of works, jazz, so obviously he knows how to tell a story. It was a very accurate story. And all I mean by that is the important people he brought in to focus on were the right ones, basically. One other thing, I got to do a panel with the writer and producer of the film, Dayton Duncan. And when I was on the panel with them, they sent a 2-hour clip of the film. And I could tell immediately that they got the dignity of country music. And that was so important. A lot of times when people try to write about, do a film about, talk about country music, it lacks the dignity of the people. A lot of times there's the cartoon version of hay bales and missing teeth and feuding and all sorts of sort of country music portrayals. What I thought the film brought about was the dignity that I know is within the music. I grew up in country music, fully inundated with it, and they were telling a true story. And it had the dignity of the people. And that was an extremely important piece of information to have and to get across in that film.
So when you walked into the Ryman Theater for the very first time, what was your reaction? And when was that, by the way?
I was 6 years old. It's 1965. The Opry was still at the Ryman Auditorium. And it was our first vacation as a family. And there was only one place my family was going to have a vacation, from northern Indiana. My dad was a steel mill worker. You're only going to go to Nashville, Tennessee. You're going to go to the Opry. You're going to visit the Opry stars' homes. You know, those bus tours that drive in front of people's homes and stuff. We did all of that. And, you know, I was awed. First of all, I'd never seen a show like that, but I'd heard it on radio from northern Indiana. So I was just blown away by country music. I mean, and the Grand Ole Opry and the first trip to Nashville.
So your dad was a songwriter. How did he get into this? Did he listen to the radio? Is he one of those portrayed guys?
Yeah.
And Ken Burns, they listened to the radio and he got caught?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, for a poor family in Kentucky, or maybe a lot of places, to get, you know, a battery to be charged up enough to hear the Opry on a Saturday night was the only entertainment that went on for the entire week. You'd go to church, you'd go to school, you'd work, but that Saturday night was party time, so to speak, you know. Popcorn is made, probably hot chocolate, maybe something stronger for the men. But just something as simple as sitting around a radio was a big deal, and that's the way my parents were raised.
What about you? How did he go from a steel or working in a coal mine to all of a sudden picking up and writing a song? That doesn't happen automatically.
Oh, for people who grow up in a farm, rural Depression era Kentucky, music became a huge part of their lives. So he and his sisters, his brothers sang. His dad played banjo. So it's just something that was part of the fabric of a mountaineer's life, was music.
So you brought up in this, you actually visit the Grand Ole Opry. Was there sort of a person, even you may have seen at the Opry, where you hoped they would be on the program? You could say, I saw so-and-so?
Yeah, Marty Robbins was one of those. There was a guy named Bob Luman. Bob was kind of like a rockabilly end of country. Very much could have easily been on Sun Records, at the time, or maybe shortly after Charlie Rich or Johnny Cash, Jerry Lee Lewis, all that. Tom Paul and the Glazer Brothers, their harmonies. Any of the bluegrass stuff, whether it was Jim and Jesse or Bill Monroe, Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs, or anything like that, absolutely fantastic. Loretta Lynn, Minnie Pearl. So to me, it was this stuff I'd heard on radio too, but there it is right in front of me. So it was an important to see. Plus, I got my first instrument at a pawn shop in Nashville when I was 6, and a bass guitar, and so I played bass in the family band with that instrument for many, many years. So Nashville, and then the next year when we took my dad finally learned to take vacations. They were always Nashville. There was never another vacation. It was Nashville for every year until we moved away from the eastern region. When we moved to California, it wasn't Nashville anymore.
So, back to Nashville, because that was sort of the central focus of Burns' movie. And you're part of that, your world of that. Did the Bluebird Cafe, was that part of your world also as you were kind of working your way, looking for opportunities?
Yeah, the Bluebird was this place in totally different time, right? Like, the Bluebird didn't exist probably until the 80s, I'll bet. But I didn't move to Nashville till 92. And the Bluebird was this frightening place to be, even though it was smaller than where we are tonight. It's more like the size of this, actually, this room we're in. But there was just something about its history, and you never knew who would be in the audience type of thing. So it took me 10 times of playing the Bluebird before I could even not be just nervous as hell about it, because of all of that came ahead of me about the Bluebird. It doesn't affect me quite that way any longer. I understand what it is historically, but also I played it enough to not be on edge, about it. But it did take easily 10 times of playing it, where I didn't feel like I was going to jump out of my skin to be there, playing it around, So
I'm just going to talk about that, because they showed that in the movie. How did that really work? Is it just kind of go from person to person to person, or did you just jam and somebody would jump in and jam and jump in?
No, basically how it happens, like I'm doing a Bluebird show there in December. And how it happens is you call the Bluebird and say, hey, I'd like a night. And then in my case, I have the prerogative of either going in by myself and just doing a night like I did tonight, so to speak, or I can choose other writers and then we make a round. So if I'm the captain, so to speak, I pick my 4 writers and then we render. And no rehearsal, no anything, just if you can sing on my song or play, great. If you can't, stay out of the way. I'll do the same. And you curate an evening by choosing the other writers who are going to be there with you. And it's fun. And it's casual. It's not a big deal. It's not prepared. And that's one of the beauties of why a Nashville round works, is it's very casual. And yet, if you've chosen the, high level of writers, you're going to have a great night. A great night.
How do for a guy like you who's done so much with so many, how do the economics for a young songwriter to work into Nashville? I'm going to Nashville, I've got a song, I'm able to sing. How does it really work? They kind of paint a picture in the movie that now it's sort of corporate America. It's not that easy.
Yeah, I'm not sure it ever was easy per se, and that's something that I was curious about when I did the panel with Dayton Duncan, the producer and writer for the movie. I was curious, like, where they would stop the film historically, because And I was really happy about where they did decide to stop it because, and he answered it because he was asked this at the panel, was, why didn't you go further? You know, why didn't you go to current stars? And he had a really good answer, which was, and this is a funny line, there's a point where you can go in Nashville to where you're really you may be doing the wishes of the labels or the big stars. Hey, I want to be in the Ken Burns film. Have them call me and I'll be interviewed too, right? You know what I mean? No, thank you. No, thanks. You don't need to be in our film. I thought they made incredible decisions about that. So they weren't being the pawns of labels, managers, artists. No, thank you. And the reason they gave was because you have to have some years in order to have a historical perspective. So you can't have last week's hit maker and then try to make a case that they're important for our future of country music, because you'd be making it up.
Right.
It isn't true. How you get perspective of a historical kind is to have some history. So they left maybe the last 20, 25-ish years out of the picture. And they focused on everything before that, and that was the right decision. Otherwise, you run the risk of being the pawn to labels, managers, high-powered people who want their act in this film. No, thank you. You don't get to be in the film.
If they had an extra hour to add, not necessarily chronologically, but to squeeze in a story, because I'm assuming they left a bunch of stuff on the floor. What would you like to have seen editorially, a piece that perhaps they didn't cover or they didn't cover well or much?
Well, I honestly, I have no idea. I think they've covered it ridiculously well. And I'm someone who knows the history of country music. I know my parents' era of country music, which is the 40s and 50s. And I know my era of country music, which was the 60s and 70s. And everything I've seen, first of all, I haven't seen all of it. I've got 2 more episodes to go.
No spoiler.
Yeah, so I haven't seen number 7 and number 8, but I will. And so far, they got it on Hank Williams, Johnny Cash, Haggard, Tammy Wynette, Loretta Lynn, Patsy, Willie, Christopherson. They did a great job on Christopherson. So I have nothing but applause for how they edited 80 hours. I heard it was 80 hours of really good work brought down to 16 and a half. How do you do that?
When they do your documentary, the Darrel Scott show, where will they show the beginning? Will that be sort of if you had the beginning score, you walking into the Ryman at 6 years old, kind of that first explosion? Is that how you start the movie?
No, that's a good one though, but it preceded that. It would be what got me to be at the Opry as a 6-year-old to see my first Opry. It'd probably start on a front porch in Kentucky in my parents' era, and them sitting around playing music and then going to church and hearing that music, because basically that's where it came from. My music came from their music, and it was so strong and rich in my family that there was no way that you have 5 boys and that they're not going to play music. We will play music. Honestly, my dad raised a band. He didn't raise boys, he raised a band. And we all play different instruments, and that was not an accident. That was complete strategy and wish. And so it would start before the 6-year-old. It would probably start in the generation ahead of that.
So where did you play? Your dad got these various age boys. And by the way, what age groups were you?
So when I started, I was 6. My first bass in Nashville at the pawn shop was 6. My brother on drums was 8. And I used to be the drummer, and then I passed on so I could play bass. And then my oldest brother, who was a great guitarist at 11, oddly enough, I mean, he was I mean, he was way beyond his years. So that meant he was the guitarist of the family. So that meant I was the bass player. And so I didn't become, you know, good on guitar until I was 14 or 16 or 18 or that kind of stuff. I mean, good enough to sort of like, yeah, I can do this. I was the bass player of the group. And it was a great foundation because bass is, like the word says, it's the base, it's the foundation. And so if I learned the foundation, and then therefore when I played other instruments, I could build it upon something I already knew and understood.
Was there an aha moment in Darrel Scott's career where you said, you know, I can write songs that actually can be commercially successful?
The goal wasn't to have songs to be commercially successful. The goal was to write songs that were meaningful and moving to me. And that was the goal. Now the real goal is if you can do that and they're commercially successful. Now you've got a double whammy going on. And to me I was very lucky in that because I really was trying to write true and meaningful and earnest, honest songs first and commercial songs second.
So you have a song with Zac Brown sings Heavy is the Head that you co-wrote and performed with Chris Cornell that reached #1 in the rock charts.
Yeah.
Does that kind of strike you from where you came from? All of a sudden you're in the rock charts?
Yeah, that was fantastic. I mean, that was unbelievable. And also it's a killer song. I mean, for a rock, going after it type of song, it's killer. And the finish work of it was the Chris Cornell. I mean, when I heard Chris on that song, it was like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. It already was like really strong, but with Cornell, it just was like, forget it. This is amazing. Yeah. Well, I mean, in a way, what's it matter?
It doesn't matter.
You know, if they ask it and you don't, congratulations, you didn't have to ask the old silly thing that they ask. The thing they ask is which comes first, the melody or the lyric? And it's neither. What comes first is the inspiration. And that's what I'm pay attention to. Music and lyric, I could probably play a song right now or a melody and a chord progression right now. So what? It's the inspiration that would put something together that's way more important. So they ask that, you don't need to, because it's not the lyrics or the melody, it's the inspiration that comes first.
Well, you've inspired a lot of people tonight.
Great.
Just thank you for coming to Jamestown.
Yeah, you know, people were extremely welcoming. They were like, thank you for coming to Jamestown. I had at least 12 people say that, you know, and they meant it, you know. So hey, I've never been to Jamestown before, and here I am.
You're going to get a chance to even crawl over there tomorrow?
Yeah, I'm starting my morning over at the museum.
Fantastic.
I've already got a lead on a good breakfast, and that's kind of all I need to know. The rest I'll figure out.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Thank you.